Hi, I'm Bernie, sometimes BSG, and I wrote the MuseScore Articulation plugin. In this video, I'm not only going to show you how to use it, but why you want to, in the service of realistic sounding music. In order to use it, first you have to download it, and then install it. That's easy. First you have to go to my GitHub page, which is github.com/Bernard Greenberg. And there's me taken a couple of years ago before the pandemic. And once you go there, click on MuseScore Plugins, and you'll see this listing. And you should click this green button, Code, the little arrow over here, and you'll see the option Download Zip. Well, click that, and it says what should you do, open it or save it, and whatever is appropriate in your browser and operating system, just download it. And if you open the zip file, you will see that someplace in it is articulate.qml. And what you have to do is move that into your MuseScore plugins directory. Here's my MuseScore 3 directory, and there's plugins, and if you just take that and move it to here, and I'm not going to because I have it already. That's how you get it. Now, how to install it is one more step. Once you've got it in the directory, you have to tell MuseScore to use it. That's easy. Choose the Plugins item from the top-level menu and Plugin Manager. And you'll see the Plugin Manager, and under A you'll find Articulate. Mine is already checked, but you have to click the checkbox to check it. Then you must define a shortcut. On Windows, Control-Alt-T, and on Mac, Option-Command-T. So define shortcut, and click New Shortcut, then type Option-Command-T or Control-Alt-T, and add. And have these dialogues, and you're in business. Let's take a look at the score of a terrific duet from Bach's Cantata 10, Meine Seele erhebt den Herrn, the duet Denke der Barmherzigkeit, he remembering his mercy. We're just going to look at the first 5 measures, which is a continuo solo, but we can call it a cello solo if you like. On the first staff, I've simply entered the notes from the Bach Gesellschaft score. It sounds like this. Pretty cool Bach line, with all kinds of sequences and tritones and other neat stuff. But we really want it to sound like this. Go back and compare. I'll show you how to make it sound like the second one. The reason the second version sounds so much better is that it is phrased as though it were being sung. In fact, if you know the movement, you can well imagine it being sung to these words. Forgive my poor singing. Erdenket der Barmherzigkeit, erdenket der Barmherzigkeit. Let's look at the origins of this line. This text is from the Magnificat, the Canticle of the Virgin Mary in the Gospel of St. Luke. In the Vulgate, it's Suscepit Israel puerum suum, recordatus misericordiae suae. Suscipe is to pick up, take up, as in suscipe deprecationem nostram, or the salary of a Tokyo chef, as some say. And King James guys translated it as help. You see the English there. But Luther switched the clauses and kept the up. Aufhilfen is to help someone up, as from a chair, and it becomes rap poetry. Denkt der Barmherzigkeit und hilft seinem Diener Israel auf. Listen to those I ams, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong. Now we can help it, so to speak. We can always say denket instead of denkt in German, i.e. thinketh, and now we have denket der Barmherzigkeit und hilft seinem Diener Israel auf. But what about those triplets, those dactyls? Hilft seinem Diener Israel auf. Well, that's 6/8 meter, and there's the movement. We have to remember that all well-written musical lines carry conceptual words and phrases, even if they are purely instrumental. And with the phrasing plugin, or a competent musician, we can bring them out. On the fourth staff here, I have entered the raw notes again. First, we have to note that the MuseScore cello is not being played in legato fashion. All of the notes are separated by a tiny space. Listen to the first 4 notes. That is really not smooth enough for the legato of der Enget, or Herr sich, even though the note says it is 1000 per mille, or 100% of its full value. To see that, I click on the first note of the pair, and I press Option-Command-T, or on Windows, Control-Alt-T. And there we are, there's the 1000 per mille. On most MuseScore instruments, notes are born at 1000 per mille. I found that the MuseScore cello can be made legato with 1100 per mille, i.e. 110%. So let's just change it. And click Apply or press Enter, and listen. Isn't that better? Now I'm going to change both of the ders and the hertz, as you can watch. So I click on this, there's the plugin, change it to 1100, and the hertz, change that to 1100. I'm typing Enter instead of clicking Apply, and this der while we're at it. Let's listen to what we have. That's beginning to sound like music. I've got some pretty good legati now, but that's not all the phrasing. Let's look at these tritones, these augmented fourths. In Baroque music, that usually means that there's an implied second line. So this is actually 2 lines in counterpoint. Da da da, da dee da bum, ba da, da dee da. So we want to break between the 2 notes, and the default phrasing of the cello isn't quite enough. So I'm going to set that to 900, which turns out to be the appropriate tasteful setting in Baroque music for almost everything as far as I'm concerned. And you can experiment with it and use 850 or 950 or anything you like, but the staccato of 500 is the default staccato, is not what you want, or even the portato of 650, 850, 900, 950. So let's listen to these first 4 notes as we have them now. I'm going to give the C sharp 900. It's 1000 now, and I'm going to make that 900. Boy, is that better, huh? Now this one here too. Let's make that 900. Now, let's take this octave drop. Whenever we see an octave drop, bom, 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 we should make both notes short because this bom, bom, bom. Let's listen to it as it stands. Not good enough. Let's make them both 900. Oh, with the plugin, you can select more than one note at once, and it will do whatever you do to both of them. However, you can't count on this to say what the articulation currently is because it's different notes. So if we click these 2 notes, we make them both 900. And now we have this. That's beginning to sound like cello playing. Let's see what we have. Let's add one more feature. Do you see these repeated notes? Bum, bum, ba, da, da, bum, bum. Whenever you see repeated notes, whether it's Baroque music or some other music, you should always separate them. The default spacing we have now, well, almost, but I want to cut them back to 900. So let's do that. And here, note these are sequenced. La, da, da. That's a Bach feature. And there's our 900. Let's see what that sounds like. That's real music. Now, one more feature I want to show you. Notice that you can click many measures at once if you hold down the Shift key. Click the first one, hold the Shift key, and select the last one. That's how you select many measures in MuseScore. If now you call the plugin without the Command T, you have a new button, Show in Score. And if you click that, you will see all the articulations you chose, anything that isn't 1,000, appear. You can leave them in the score, or you can undo it. It's a fine way of checking your work or teaching somebody how to use the plugin. And one more thing. Continuo does not mean cello. It really means a cello or bass guitar or whatever have you, and a keyboard instrument or a lute that can play the right hands. It's so-called the realization. So if we add a pan flute realization to this continuo part, it sounds like this. And then we need an alto. We don't have one here. So that is your lesson. Do enjoy.